When it comes to fighting about terrorism, it's one thing to fight and debate about what should be done, how things should be handled. What's happening now, though, on terrorism is more surreal than that. What's happening now is that the argument is not just about what's right or wrong. The argument now is about what's true.
The American public doesn't understand reading Miranda rights to terrorists in Detroit when it's fairly obvious they're terrorists.
The only thing I would say to that is, didn't they do the same with Richard Reed, who was the shoe bomber?
Richard Reed was an American citizen.
Oh, sadly, no. He wasn't. He wasn't. Richard Reed, the shoe bomber, was a British citizen. He was a foreigner. Mr. Gingrich corrected himself today on Twitter after not only his host, Jon Stewart, but the whole reality-based community called him out on that. And, you know, it's one thing for one guy to make a mistake on an issue like this. But the reason I highlight this is because there has been a widespread outbreak of factual face-planting by people trying to make politics out of this specific incident, the Christmas Day attempted bombing.
Once afforded the protection our Constitution guarantees American citizens, this foreign terrorist lawyered up and stopped talking. Sadly, no. Also wrong. In America, the way the system works is you get a lawyer by virtue of being accused of a serious crime in America, even if you're a foreigner. That is not a right reserved to American citizens. But it's not just Newt Gingrich and Susan Collins. I mean, take also Republican Senator Jon Kyl, Republican Senator Jeff Sessions, former Bush Press Secretary Dana Perino. They all have adamantly rejected the Obama administration's claim that the Justice Department has successfully prosecuted more than 300 people on terrorism charges within the criminal justice system. Senator Kyl, for example, said, quote, "There haven't been 300 high-profile dangerous terrorism cases in the United States. If there were, we would have heard about them." Senator Sessions called the 300 number unsubstantiated. Dana Perino said it was, quote, as false gets. Again, sadly, no. It was the Bush Justice Department that made the claim about terrorism convictions in the U.S. courts. They made that claim frequently, enthusiastically. They even did it in presidential speeches as early as 2003. I actually think we've got that speech.
More than 260 suspected terrorists have been charged in the United States courts. More than 140 have already been convicted.
That was President Bush bragging about charging and convicting terrorists in U.S. courts back in 2003. At that point, he was bragging on 140 convictions 7 years ago. Why would it be inconceivable that the number had hit 300 by now? In President Bush's last budget request, when Dana Perino was still press secretary, the Justice Department then bragged about having convicted 319 people on terrorism charges. Dana Perino, Jon Kyl, Jeff Sessions, no one complained about that statistic when the Bush administration used it. But now that the Obama administration is citing the exact same statistic, they think it must be false. Again, I hate to keep saying this, but you know, there is a word for this sort of thing. It starts with hip and it ends with ocracy. Joining us now is Spencer Ackerman, national security correspondent for the Washington Independent. Spencer, thanks very much for your time tonight. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Rachel. Thank you.
It is one thing to disagree about what to do about terrorism and counterterrorism, but what do you make of people really blowing the basic facts here?
I think any moment now we're going to be told that we have to invade Yemen to get rid of its stockpile of weapons of mass destruction. I mean, this has gotten to such a ridiculous and hysterical point precisely for the reason that these basic premises that Republicans have told us for years about how to protect America are being disproven by the fact that a Mirandized Umar Farouk Abdulmutallab is giving, by all accounts of the intelligence community, very valuable information by being treated in the criminal justice system. He's not being tortured. No one's, taking him to a black site. He's being given the protections that the criminal justice system is typically afforded. And this is just blowing people's minds. It doesn't compute in the conservative calculus.
Well, we've got, the shoe bomber comparison has been made. It's been commonly made, but we're left sort of with this this inexplicable problem, right? We've got a guy in the same month of the year using the same type of explosives, trying to do the exact same thing, being arrested in roughly the same way, being Mirandized in the same way, being given a lawyer in the same way, being treated by the criminal justice system in the same way, being interrogated, as far as we can tell, roughly in the same way, not in ways that people have at least tried to politicize in that regard. We've got these two cases that were handled essentially identically, but Republicans want the one that was handled by the Republican president to be okay and the one handled by the Democratic president to be not okay. And so they're trying to find facts that would create a relevant distinction between them, and there just isn't one.
It's lying. I mean, let's just get rid of all pretense here. They are simply lying because they've got nothing left to make a case on. Right now, what you're seeing is this moment of truth where all of these foundational premises of a lot of what the sort of permanent terror hysteria of the last 7 years that's been ginned up, supposedly the political gains of the Republican Party at stake, is just falling apart. And so now we're left with, people like Mitch McConnell, who's never been, even seeking a national security profile, making these kinds of fact-diverse claims, and Newt Gingrich saying that, he meant to actually be talking about Jose Padilla as if that's somehow exculpatory. Padilla, who, being thrown into the military system, didn't give us any intelligence. So, I don't know what they got left, but we'll probably see it over the next couple days.
Spencer, as in your capacity as a national security reporter, and I know from reading your stuff that you have pretty good sources on both sides of the aisle, who are the Republicans volunteering as their national security heavy hitters, as their real heavyweights on this issue now?
I mean, I'm waiting to see, who the next, players are, who's coming off the bench, who's hitting the backcourt, buzzer shots like Chris Hayes does all the time in his pickup basketball games. Because right now we're seeing the scrubs. We're seeing, Kyle and Sessions and Bond. I'm surprised to see Susan Collins, who's, normally very sensible and reality-based, come out here. But aside from that, people like Mitch McConnell, Newt Gingrich, wearing his throwback jersey, is somehow, on the court. I'm just surprised by all this. Normally it's kind of, left to John McCain and Lindsey Graham and Joe Lieberman to make this case, and they've been doing it too, but, we're not really seeing, too many new faces, too many people untainted by the Bush administration, when, the Cheneys or the Kagans, have more children, I suppose, those guys are going to be the ones that come out next, but, we're not seeing that next. So, like, Mitch McConnell, he's the new face of, security policy for the Republican Party.
Crystal family, we're all hoping. Spencer Ackerman, national security correspondent for the Washington Independent. Thanks very much for joining us, Spencer. Appreciate it.